Well, hello and welcome back. We are going to continue looking at some ways to get Python and Django up and running. We've looked at the URLs, we've looked at views, we've got some very basic web pages up. I think before we go further into the website, I want to look back at the back end. I'm going to talk about models. Now, if you look at what we've done so far, we do not have models existing yet. It happens to be yet another file, much like what we're using. So I'm just going to, because I'm lazy, I'm going to duplicate this file. I'm going to call it models.py, and this one I'm just going to jump into, and I'm just going to start from scratch. So the first thing you need is, because this is a Django piece, is that from django.db, we're going to import models. And this is how we are going to manage and maintain our database. We've talked about the admin side. We did that migration and built a user table and a group table, a couple of moderately basic things, but we're able to build on that. And that's what we're going to focus on here. Now, the first thing we want to do is, from this one, let's go ahead, and just because we're going to need this later, we're also going to import the user, which has already been created. And that's django.contrib.auth.models user. And let's go ahead and import date time, because we'll if I can do that correctly. So we'll use that with some of our values. And we'll go with that for now. Now, every model is a class. Now, what we want to do here is, let's say we're going to build something to track time. So the first thing we want to do is let's create an event, or we'll call it a task. Let's do that. Yeah, we'll call it a task. And so the way a model works is you give it a class. So this is going to be the task model. It's going to inherit from models.Model. And then we're going to create some attributes, much as you would have with, think about with any kind of, database table or, class in general. And so let's give it a name, and we'll come back and we'll add a little more features just a second. Let's give it a name, let's say a due date, end date, or let's say completion date, status, and let's say hours spent. Let's do it that way. And let's go ahead and give it a creation date as well. Oh, and we'll give it an owner. So we'll give it an owner. So if those are our properties, now we need to go back. If with any class, what you want to do is you want to go back and you want to assign it some sort of a value. Is it a string? Is it an integer? Is it a date? Things like that. So you do that with an equals. So this first part is going to be the name. And I'm going to show you a little more detail of this when we actually build out how this relates to the database. But for right now, everything's going to be off of models. So let's make him, name is going to be a character field. And with that, there are some things that we can do. There are properties with each of these, some arguments that we can use so that we can adjust these accordingly. In this one, let's say our max length is going to be, let's make it 40. So 40. We'll keep it pretty simple there. So it's pretty straightforward. Let's make it 50 just because it's a nice round number. So we're using a character field here. So for our dates, though, we're going to use a model.DateTime. And we're going to use that for completion date as well. And creation date is going to be that. Status is going to be a number. So there you can find that there's going to be, and you can see here, Well, this one shows us because it gives us some stuff, but there's some things that you have out there that you would normally expect. Booleans, you've got floats, and you've got things like this, which is an integer field that we want. Hours spent, let's save that, change that to minutes spent, and that's still going to be an integer field. And then owner is also going to be an integer field. But owner is actually going to be a user, in which we've got this user. So here, we can change this around and we can tell it that I'm going to use a user, or that I want this to be of type user. And let's do him model. Actually, we'll keep him like that. So he's going to be models.ForeignKey or foreign key, if I can type it right. And we'll talk about a foreign key in just a minute. So delete. Oh, there we go. Now, what we've done here is we've created what is called a foreign key. This is how we relate tables to each other. This says that a field in one table, actually the data for it is in another table. In this case, for this task table, we have an owner, but it actually points us back to the user table. And I added this sort of just out of habit, essentially. On delete says that if I delete the user, then it's going to delete all of the tasks related to that. So it's going to cascade delete any records that are related to that master record. This is really, it's a little more advanced database stuff, so we don't have to worry about it too much. For now, let's keep it sort of simple. And we've got a couple of basic property types that we've looked at now. So we've got our characters, and there's some things we can do with this. We've seen our max length. We can also give it, we can say whether it can be blank or not. So let's say it can be blank. Let's say status, that's integer. And let's say here, we can say that null equals false. So it's got to be required. That means we have to give it a status. Minutes, let's say null equals true. Creation date. Now, this is something that's going to be, we use this a lot, so I'm going to go ahead and step into this one. And that is the idea of a timestamp, that when a record gets created, we're going to put the timestamp of when it got created. And what we're allowed to do here is we are able to set default values. So in this case, we're going to do a datetime dot now. And what that does is, I've got one level of date time. Then the date time, I'm going to do date time, and then I'm going to do a now. And that says that when it's created, whatever that time is, when it's created, I'm going to assign that to the creation date. Owner is going to be set, but this is something we're going to have to set when we create it. Minutes can be empty. Status cannot be, so we're going to have to give it one. And let's just give it, we'll give it a default of 1. Completion date is just a straight up time. Due date is a straight up time. And now we've got a name. So now we've got some basics here for a table, for a class. So what can we do with this? Well, let's see. First here, those are, let me correct a couple of these. Let's see. Let me make sure I got this guy right. DateTimeField. There we go. My bad. And that's a capital T. So let's make sure I get those right. luckily, it gives me some nice little intelligence to tell me how to work this. So datetime field. Did I miss one somewhere? And so now what do I do with this? Well, I've created this model. What I can do is I can actually go back to manage. Remember, we used that before, we used a migrate. Well, now I can do Python 3 manage, and then I can do make migration. I'm sorry, migrations. It says there's no changes detected. So now, also, one of the things we've got to do here is have to actually tell it what apps to use. And here, I'm going to use this DP project. We always have to include our own application as part of it. So it's going to go, that means now it's going to look in this DP project. And if I change the settings, let's see, am I in the right place? I am. I go back and try to do make migrations. Oh, and now we need to actually do it for this project. And we have now added in a migration. So it created this whole thing. Let's go take a look at that real quick. If we look at migrations, this created this initial. And we can see this task table we just created is here. There's an operation. It's going to create a model, create task, and it creates each of these fields that we just set up. So if we go in here and we actually do migrate, then it says, okay, it's been applied. And now if we go look at that database, let me make sure I type the password in correctly. What is a password? Something like, oh, there we go. So if I go back and I actually know my password, and now remember we have this database that we're working with. Now if we do show tables, what we're going to see is this task table that we just created. And notice that it is prefixed with the project name, the application name, DP project. And so if we describe that, and if we want to see what that looks like from a SQL point of view, then we'll see what we've got: name, due date, completion date, status, minutes, all that good stuff. Now, interesting thing here to note is that it added an ID. We did not go back to our models. There's no ID there. By default, that's what it's going to do. Is it's going to, it being Django, is going to say, hey, you've got a table. You've got to have a primary key. You have to have an ID. And this, yeah, it's a little bit of database work terminology, but this says that's our primary key. And it's going to auto increment it. So as I create records, it's going to do IDs for me. So I've been able to go in, create a table, set some various values. I've got some defaults. I've got a couple different things I can do with it. And let's see, how would we do that? Well, in the most basic way, let's go ahead and turn that into our admin side. So if you remember, let's get out of here. And let's run our app real quick. Oh, actually, let's run it out of here. Now, one thing we want to do with this is let's go ahead and quickly find a way to actually administer this, which is pretty easy to do also in the Django world. We've talked about the admin site, and that is key. The key piece to that is having an admin.py. Now, what we want to do in that one is we're going to import this task to make sure that we can do something with it. The first thing we do is we need to bring in, we're going to bring in the admin. So from Django, I'm going to change this over a little bit. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm in models. I want to be an admin instead. So from Django contrib, I'm going to import the admin. So I can take all those basic admin field forms that we've already seen. And then from my app, which is DP project models, I'm going to import task. Oh, there it is. I'm going to import task. And now within here, I'm going to define a little bit about task. Now he's going to be models.Model. Except for he's going to be admin.model. And we're going to have a few fields. Let's go back to look at what we had here. Let's do, and we'll just do name. And I'll show this in just a second. Oh. So now, if I take that, I don't want to duplicate it. So he's going to be task admin. And then I need to tell it that now that I've got this, I've got to tie that form, that table into the admin. And I do that by adding it in, by doing a register. It's going to be task admin, and I'm just going to call him. So task uses task admin. And then I need to restart my server. Just here. And then if I take a look at it and go log in, now I can see that I've added that table in there. Let's kill that guy. And I can see it's listed. So I have tasks. Tasks is the name. I can go in here. I can see I have no records, but I can add a task, and it's going to allow me to do this. So this is going to be test task 1. I'm just going to do today now. Be the due date. Status is 1 minutes. I'll put a number in there just because. And the owner is going to be me. If I save, completion date's required. I did not set that as a null. So that'll be something we're going to fix, but now I've got that record and I can delete it if I want to. And I can actually administer some of my data from there. So that's where we're going to stop for now. We're going to come back and look at a couple of these things in our next session. But right now, just to do a quick review, we created 2 things today. We created models.py, and we created a class called task that we are able to set some values on. We used the make migrations, and then migrate to create that in our database. And then we created the admin.py script to give ourselves a way to take a look at that table. And when we come in tomorrow and the next time around, we're going to do some more work with that table. We're going to add some others, and we're just going to continue down this path. So thanks a lot for your time, and we'll see you next time around.